to play here on Ellis Park, and to get my first start like that, it's just what dreams are made of, and I know Louis Diak is not here now, but he's a man who, he's really helped me a lot with all the lineouts, and it's just great to have a senior player have an influence on your game like that, and it's just stuff that dreams are made of.
I believe we're all human. We do make mistakes like knock-ons and silly stuff like that. That happens, but well done to the effort of the guys. You can always judge effort, but small mistakes, it happens.
For the Lions, a disappointing day. They offer some things they've got to look at. Maybe they're not the team they were about 3 years ago. The personnel has changed. Maybe it's time to just approach games differently. Maybe a little tweak of the game plan here and there. They don't have those big speedsters out wide. No big ball carrying players as well. For the Bulls, it's just momentum going forward. For the Lions, it's back to the drawing board.
Obviously not the best of performances, but I think most importantly for us, to get the wins under the belt, get a bit of confidence going. I think the first week, gave us a bit of a knock. So I think it's important for us, to get the confidence back and build some momentum going into a tough tour.
No, I think this game was a learning curve for us. I think the past 2 games, our set pieces were functioning quite well, which the Stormers managed to disrupt us this game. So I think going forward, we just need more problem solvers, in the game. As a backline, we couldn't do much, but going forward, we'll have to find a plan.
There's a lot of players that need to step up. They need to minimize mistakes. Discipline has been an issue as well. When they head to Australasia, these teams are going to have to be a lot more on their game.
Well, round 3 of Vodacom Super Rugby has concluded, and we'll be taking a look at the highlights from this past week's play. I'm not alone, and talking through what we saw, that drama yesterday, which left the Sharks and left the Lions feeling a little bit blue, and we're in red, so we're not feeling blue. Kaya Malotana joins us in studio, and we'll be chatting about all of that and more. But before we get cracking and talk details, let's take a look at the best of the weekend.
Reality final snapped up by Penrith. Oh, gets a great follow on Marbury. Oh, what a try! He's got 2. That is absolutely brilliant.
Wide they go. Oh, beautiful ball from Craig Cooper out to Jack Maddox. He scores the try. Bit of Cooper magic there. And Maddox has another one.
Douglas, Mwanga, Bateman, Barrett, good hands from Goodhue, and good backing up on the inside from Jordan, and the pace is on. He's got some toe as well, and Enor is over on the far side. Hegarty back on the inside, and that is a cracking try. Wow, the Crusaders.
Underheaver again, and now Mosiathor trying to run over the top of Damien McKenzie. The ball's secured, and now Underheaver are going to get what they wanted a minute ago. They were always looking threatening down that right side, and then Underheaver, well, if anybody tonight deserves a try, it's Underheaver.
Papier, Jenkins, good cleaning out. Chance here for the Bulls, going from Mullen, and he's over.
Oh, some very slick handling, but then the interception comes for Damian Willemse, who will go in under the posts for the Stormers' second try of this 2019 season.
Well, there's plenty to talk about after this past weekend. Besides the drama, some pretty good results for 1 or 2 of the teams. The New Zealanders, well, they suffered 3 losses this past weekend. That does not happen very often, Mr. Malotana. But I suppose we will focus a little bit more heavily on the South African teams. First things first, it's good to see you, and thanks for reading the memo about the red shirt.
No, thanks for having me, X. the show obviously for me it's quite exciting. Having to look back at the weekend, see what came out. What was interesting, what the bloopers were as well.
Yep.
So yeah, looking forward to.
So let's start. Let's start in the land of the long white cloud. Let's take the results from New Zealand, and I suppose it's not been the greatest reading from a New Zealand point of view. The Hurricanes, they managed to win against the Brumbies, so not too much to write home about. The Highlanders, yes, travelled up against the Rebels, but the Rebels, they look like a wonderful team this year.
Yeah, the Rebels, there's something about them this season. They've got a different step. Quade Cooper with Will Guinea as a combination are really sparking that team, to performance. And, Quade is back, to his soft touches where he's putting people in space. And the nice thing about him this season that I've picked up is not trying too much. He's keeping it simple, but he's still managing to create those moments of magic every once in a while. So I think they're going to be, a great force out of the Australasian teams to come out of there. Highlanders, I kind of felt they were always going to struggle with Aaron and Ben Smith out, and it kind of showed. They looked directionless most of the time.
Don't leave the Smiths at home.
You can't. Your locksmiths have got to be with you to unlock any kind of defense. So it's areas that I think going forward they need to look at in terms of what's coming after these players. They're going to retire at some point.
Yeah.
People need to fill those shoes, and at the moment they're struggling.
So 2 weeks ago, we heard the wolf howls from the Sunwolves in the stadium at the Prince Chichibu Stadium. Oh, but my word, they deserve it. They howled this weekend. And the Chiefs, I think, will still be feeling slightly shell-shocked at what was, I think, the shock result of the competition thus far. And could well be the shock result of the tournament all season. Who knows? But this was great from the Sunwolves. Gerard van der Heever is playing really well. But we spoke about the fact, and we have been, that over the last few seasons, Sunwolves, very well-coached team. They're very quick in their movement. They spread the ball. They have real intent going forward. You don't want to give them too much ball.
Of course, their ball retention has improved a lot, which gives them, a fair crack at defensive lines. And obviously you can pick out the New Zealand influence in terms of coaching of the team. And the fact that obviously a lot of the players, are outside players. Gerard has been a chief destroyer for them.
Yeah.
I think he's averaging, he's got a good try-scoring average at the moment.
Yeah.
Funny enough, before this try we just saw now, he just fluffed an opportunity where there was a kick through and he couldn't pick it up, and he kind of made up for that, within a minute. So it worked out for him, and nobody predicted the Sunwolves would go to the Chiefs Stadium and win, and they pulled it off.
Chiefs making areas that you don't necessarily see from a Chiefs side or a New Zealand side for that matter. What is going wrong there? Is it just pressure? Is it just maybe this management of players and All Blacks, and it might be having an impact on the team?
It could be, if I look at, the All Blacks in the Chiefs side, barring Brodie Retallick, who's always, a talisman, he's giving it his all. It's almost like guys are kind of holding back, waiting to peak at a different time than now. And it doesn't give them flow. You'd expect more from a Chiefs side. A lot of people are saying, oh, well, you've lost players like Liam Messam and, those caliber players. But for me, the kind of mistakes they're making, it's almost as if they're still trying to find how they want to play the game. And it's unusual for a New Zealand side because their systems are kind of universal to all the franchises. So it's easy for players to slot in and run with the system. At the moment, they seem a little disjointed.
All right, and then let's bring it back home. The Lions up against the Bulls. It was mooted to be the big match of the weekend. It certainly lived up to its expectation. The Lions, they'll be feeling slightly hard done by. The one man who's not in that Lions team, obviously we saw the injury, Warren Whiteley. What does it mean to that Lions team when he is not present? And it seems to me, at least, to affect them. The Bulls, you can't take anything away from them. They're playing great rugby. Their pack was really good. They dominated when they needed to. And the tries they are producing are absolutely masterful. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah. Starting with the Bulls, I kind of had the feeling that they'll just be a little too strong for the Lions up front. Lions obviously have lost the likes of Marvin Orie, who is one of the competition's top tackle makers leading into this game. Line-out takes as well.
Yeah.
So they kind of lost, that firepower up front. So it was always going to be a challenge for Malcolm to try and get the rest of the guys behind him to try and meet the Bulls at the gain line at least. And they failed to do that. And so it was always going to be difficult for the back line to fire. You know, it was a tough job for Elton and Nick Groom to get, you know, flow going because the pack was just outplayed. Andre Pollard just stuck the lines in their half, wouldn't let them get out, and Bulls just capitalized and put pressure, and they took the penalties when they needed to. So they played proper, almost became like a test match scenario for the Bulls. Put pressure, more opportunities for points come up, take them, and they did that clinically.
So the one thing that I really like about the show that's being displayed by Pollard is it gives ultimately Rassie options. It gives him options in that Pollard, we know, is valuable as a 10 and a 12 potentially. Yeah. He can cover both. Elton really didn't have a game to match, unfortunately, but you want to have Andre Pollard playing well. We know that he is the incumbent. Yes, there's always talk about there could be, and there's Damien, and there is competition, but Pollard, we know, he's got the number one, he's got the inside lane. He has to play well.
He has to, and you know, in a World Cup here, you want that pivotal position to be secure. You don't want to have doubts going into a World Cup that, oh, I've still got two guys that are sort of 50-50 in this position. He's put his hand up already this season to say, I'm the security in that position. And he was very calm on game day. He just directed things effortlessly, which is what you want.
We don't have any forwards on the show. They've been banned this weekend. But we've got to talk about the hookers. And you touched on Skalk Brits. Malcolm Marx, you also touched on as well. Malcolm, I thought, really battled with his lineouts, and that's staple for a hooker. That's something that he's going to have to work on. Bongi Monambi as well. I mean, those are aspects of their game that they're going to have to brush up on. Skalk Brits, he's making a real charge for that World Cup squad.
You know, Skalk is actually doing it with a smile on his face. He's relishing, you know, the opportunities given by the Bulls and the role that they've given him. His ball carries were very, very good. He overshadowed Malcolm Marx in this game. You know, one could argue that our captain's armband was maybe a little bit of a distraction on Malcolm, and he hardly featured in this game. And like you say, you know, lineouts, bit of a struggle. Skalk was pinpoint as usual, and you want that in your hooker. And also, you know, the old man is still showing a bit of toe, you know, a bit of goose step, leaving a youngster behind. You know, those are elements of his game that we know make Skalk Brits a player he is. I like the way he goes into contact. Skalk has always got this knack of a little shimmy into space. He doesn't just take men on, and he's always gives himself the option of the offloads.
Yeah, well, you can see it there, statistically speaking, the comparison. And Malcolm did have more ball in hand, but you'd have to say that in terms of what Skalk did in the tight, which is what we don't necessarily expect to see. But to me, that's what makes him special, is that, yes, we know what he can do when the game is nice and free-flowing and he's got wonderful pace, but it's what he did in the tight, which I thought was...
He was down in the war zone. He was in those rucks, competing at every ruck. You know, where everybody would have thought, because, you know, he's at the age he's at, you'll sort of get the directive that, Skalk, please manage yourself. We don't want you getting hurt or anything like that. He climbed in this game. And, you know, as a senior guy, to do that and show the youngsters, don't be scared. Let's meet these guys at gain line, and it's who's got the bigger heart that's going to walk away with it. And you want your senior guys leading the charge in that, and you certainly did that for that pack.
Drink your coffee before it gets cold, Coach. Yeah, feel free to chat to us. We've got the hashtag running, SS Rugby. If you want to ask Kaya any questions, if you agree or disagree with anything that we're chatting about, share your thoughts. Love to hear from you. When we return, we'll be taking a closer look at the Sharks up against the Stormers, and two guys who played for either team and also, I suppose, together in the Springbok squad, had a little moment. And check out the expression right at the end of this.
In terms of leadership and as a player, who's the best captain that you ever played under for the Springboks? Eben Etzebeth or John de Villiers?
Definitely John de Villiers.
The one thing I would say about that interpretation is that although there was no direct contact to the head, the whiplash effect on the neck and head, inside the head, there's a lot of jarring goes on. So we don't want to see that at all. And that's pretty poor discipline from Nshe, who's a quality ball carrier himself. But like, he did everything wrong, really. And he put McFadden in a pretty dangerous and vulnerable place.
Two Ox. Yo. Yo, unfortunately, he did deserve that. Probably more as well. Probably should have been a red. But we'll take a look at some of the more controversial moments. I think there'll probably be a growing list over the weeks. But very quickly, before we come back to the Sharks game, the last match of the weekend saw the Jaguares claim yet another win. The Blues, for all of their intent, how well they've played so far, a new coach, a head coach in charge, they just aren't able to get the results. I know it's difficult to travel to Argentina from New Zealand, but they're just not getting the results. I don't know what it is. What more do these guys need to do? They've got the talent. They've got, I thought, what was a good pack this year. They've got really wonderful backs, just not getting the results.
It's just not coming together, X, and it's very difficult to pinpoint it. And, one could say, yes, now they've gone and looked for another coach, and maybe players are taking time to get used to his philosophies. But for the experience and the kind of players, I mean, Blues are one of those teams where if you want to make your Super Brew pick, you look at the personnel and you think there's no ways these guys have got to pull one for you, and then this happens. So I don't know. They need to go back to the drawing board and really have a look at their philosophy of playing the game.
But don't you think that bringing Leon McDonald in, it was partially to bring some of that Crusaders mentality and influence to the Blues?
If that is so, sometimes it does take time for the players to kind of adapt and have that mentality and that switch in mind that now we're playing this kind of attacking brand. It might take 2-3 games. They started off well, and we thought, yes, they've grasped it, and then immediately they hit a speed bump, and then they had to travel to Argentina, which we all know is not very easy to do. So maybe, it's just hard lessons in the beginning. And it's one of those where they just need to stay consistent in what they're doing and, start believing that, they're good enough to do it. You can't have a Ma'anonu and Sonny Bill, and
not get the results.
Yeah,
the rest of that team, that backline, unbelievable. Let's bring it back home. Black Panther went down. The Sharks lost. The Stormers will be really happy because the way they started the season, they would have been slightly worried. They got really criticized after their first week's result. They bounced back nicely these last 2 weeks.
2 on the trot. And nobody...
And this one away from home.
And nobody kind of saw that one coming up. But I've got to say, though, the way I saw, Etzebeth putting in the effort, the way I saw Peter Steff again putting in the effort, guys like that will lead the charge to the transformation you need for the team to perform. And it's almost like they went to the Shark Tank with that mentality that, boys, for what we are about and what we've been building. I know this was their way of just shutting the outside world out and focus on them and what they can do.
Yeah. Peter Steff, Player of the Year. He really is reveling in this with a 7 jersey on his back. He's still able to help out in the lineouts. He is a wonderful option. He's called the lineouts for the Stormers. That tackle by the Beast. Oh, was Beast lucky there?
I kind of feel for Beast because, he's come out of the line at speed there, and Peter Steff was kind of almost ducking as well. What saves him, I think, is the fact that he slips off it. He doesn't go through with it. So he's a little lucky there.
Yeah, but Peter Steff, what a season. There's great numbers. Every match, I mean, his initials are PSDT, and you could switch them around to PTSD after you've come across him on a rugby field because he does traumatize his opponents.
It traumatizes a lot of defenses. And, it's always good to see a player carry their form for 2-3 seasons instead of, flash in the pan kind of effort. And I think also he's got that drive of saying to Rassie, I want the 7 jersey. Please forget about me playing lock. I need to be a number 7.
He's going to be, and he's done incredibly well so far this season. There were other incidents in the match as well, and Eben Etzebeth came off the bench last weekend, and he hasn't put his foot off the pedal yet. He's been immense for somebody who's coming off an injury. He was immense again yesterday. There was a little incident, though, that took place. Let's take a look. What do you make? What do you make?
Well, the ref's call on this is that you can't come from far and charge into the ruck. But effectively, what the law is here is that you cannot arrive already mid-air into the ruck. they always explain it like this: be an aeroplane taking off and not landing.
Not landing.
So if Etzebeth had come there and was still on his feet, and he hit and took off with Louis Schroeder, would have been a different scenario.
Yeah.
But also, I think Jaco Peyper kind of caught a bit of a fright when he saw this happening in a flash, and so he says you cannot come from far, and that also got everybody riled up. What do we mean? We don't know the law.
Look at Jaco Peyper's eyes; it's on the ball,
exactly,
and then he comes right past your, from behind you as well, which is absolutely going to be a shock to him. But still, all of that said, he's been absolutely wonderful, and is going to be great for the Pox.
And from a referee's perspective as well, there's that thing now of looking after the other players. Don't try to hurt the other player unnecessarily. So the recklessness out of the game is they're trying to take it out. And, at first glance, it just seems very reckless.
Right, there are a couple of news stories just before we get to the end of the show. There's the time gone. But there's a lot of talk about a new global competition. It is only at planning stage or phase at the moment. And there seems to be a bit of criticism as well. So what they're planning to do is a global league. The top 12 test-playing nations will play in this league. At least that's the suggestion. The only problem is, if you take a look at the top 12 teams, they aren't really well represented by the Pacific Nations teams. And they are busy saying, the Pacific Islanders, that if you don't include us, we will boycott the World Cup. And I think they wouldn't be very wrong to form some sort of action to be recognized.
As is, the Pacific Islanders are not getting enough competition between World Cups, to get to experience that level of rugby that is played, by your top.
As a national unit,
As a national unit. And certainly they'll probably feel that we'll get left even further behind. So what's the use of us taking part in the World Cup where we know from boarding the plane we're already below in standard of playing with the other nations? So I think quite rightfully so, they need to put their stand if it's going to go that way. But certainly I hope it will be reviewed properly. And the other thing, there's got to be a question of, is it really necessary? If you look at the different international competitions that are happening, Rugby Championship is a solid and very competitive competition. Six Nations is very competitive. Do you want to water those down for that?
The World Cup, then the World Cup.
How is it going to affect the World Cup? Because effectively now you're having a mini World Cup between World Cups. So I think that they just got to do a proper review.
And World Rugby is very World Cup driven. Our teams, I suppose, hire coaches on the premise that they're going to stay for a 4-year cycle. But very quickly, there was another story which I think we'll probably still have a chance to reflect on, about the Stormers and a potential new coach next season, which is John Dobson, who might take over from Robbie Fleck in 2020. I'm pretty sure we'll hear more as the season progresses. But just to wrap the show, not been great at all this weekend from a Blitzbox point of view. In fact, this whole season has been tough, but we know that about sevens. We know that it's about peaks and troughs. We know that you can't sustain dominance in sevens at all from one season to the next. Maybe you can 2 seasons tops.
2 seasons at the most.
But that's it. And unfortunately, they were in a 5th place playoff here, and the Americans are looking spectacular.
Yeah, this is the quarterfinal loss to America, where they just completely got outplayed in the first 10 minutes. Of this game. And like you say, it's one of those downward troughs at the moment. Taking into consideration, there's a lot of firepower that they've lost to the 15s game.
Dylan Sage is gone.
So it's very difficult to maintain, that level of high performance when you're going to lose your senior statesman. You want to build your foundation to go further and innovate a bit more, based on the experience you have in the team. But now when you have to start again with youngsters, they need to get their confidence and and match the level of international sevens. And then you can start talking about dominating and being competitive again.
In your mind, we've got to wait another season. We've got to wait for the youngsters to become more senior. We've got to, hopefully they'll get one or two
give up on them now. If you can finish the season with them, they'll be better for it, next season. You still have senior players like South Africa who on the sidelines because of injury.
But it might be his last season as well.
And the experience he brings, South Africa in the squad will bring the best out of a Justin Geduld. Whereas Justin at the moment is he's trying his level best.
But he's carrying a lot.
Because Cecil is not there anymore. So those factors, they play a role in your performance, and hopefully next season it'll be better.
You can't lose a Kwaka Smith, Siabela Sinatla,
Rowan now, Dylan Sage.
You can't lose these guys within the space of a season and expect that things are going to be all the same. But thank you very much for joining us, Kai.
It was a pleasure.
Been absolutely wonderful. And I suppose what we're saying from a Sevens point of view is that we don't expect that they're going to necessarily bounce back. But if they can keep the team together, a lot of the youngsters, the academy players, also got a chance last year, but not too much experience for those youngsters. They'll get better as, I suppose, the season wears on. Kaya, we hope from a South African point of view that the results continue. What did you put in yours? Why are we doing cheers?
See the smile.
Oh,
no, I'm joking. It's just cappuccino.
It's a coffee from Ireland. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back same time next week. And it's been wonderful to catch up with Mr. Malotana. I'm pretty sure he'll be back on the show again. Thank you at home. And there were a couple of tweets. Didn't have enough time to go through them, but we'll certainly save them for next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cheers.